Hello and welcome to Idea Sex, where we take an analytical lens to mystical and spiritual phenomena. My name is Kiara, and today I'm going to be making the mistake of sharing some unpopular opinions regarding twin flame culture, namely how it appears to be completely missing the point. If you've been on this channel before, you know that I love my search trends because they tell us a lot about the collective's psyche, and the search trend for twin flames is so very telling. As we can see, there has been a steady upward trend in the last 5 years with a significant spike back in July 2020, and this spike coincided with a juicy piece of celebrity gossip. I'm usually completely ignorant of these things, like I live out in the middle of the desert under a rock for a reason, so I can ignore these things. But I was on AT&T's damn clickbait homepage and I saw a headline that I could not resist. I used to think I was unclickbaitable, but my devices now know that all you have to do is show me new age stuff and sell me things with unicorns on them. You got me. So this headline, Megan Fox says she and Machine Gun Kelly have a once-in-a-lifetime connection of mythic proportions. And I was like, slow down, real life Aphrodite. That sounds like a twin flame connection. And so I clicked on it, and lo and behold, that is exactly how she describes the connection, to my surprise. Instead of a soulmate, a twin flame is actually where a soul has ascended into a high enough level that it can split into two different bodies at the same time. So we're actually two halves of the same soul, I think. And I said that to him almost immediately. That's an intense pickup line, Jesus Christ. Power to you, girl. If you've never heard of twin flames, that's it in a nutshell. It's like soulmates on steroids. So a single oversoul splits into two souls and incarnates as two beings, a divine feminine and a divine masculine. Like a spiritual amoeba, reproducing through binary fission. Hot. For simplicity, I'll talk about it in terms of the male being the masculine and the feminine being the female. But that can be reversed. It can also be man-man, woman-woman, non-binary. The extent to which your dangly bits dangle is irrelevant. The point is, one flame incarnates more masculine, the other incarnates more feminine. Whereas a soulmate tends to be like warm and cozy and safe right from the get-go, right? They're like a delicious cup of tea. A twin flame is like Mentos and Pepsi. They're like explosive, intense connections that often blow up. Megan also unwittingly tells us some of what's wrong with twin flame relationships. Fox told Nylon that she has never attempted to control Kelly. Why is that in quotation marks? It's more like he looks to me to avoid his own self-destructive tendencies, she clarified, and that's where I'm useful, because on his own and left to his own devices, I don't know how much interest he has in caring for himself. Translation, let me take care of you because you can't take care of yourself, but we're going to justify the codependency by saying our connection is the stuff of legends. Okay, so enough about these two people that I don't know. I don't know their story. Two people, four walls, not my business. In this video, I just want to use that quote as a jumping off point to explore some of the unhealthy ideas that I think are being perpetuated by twin flame culture and how it's actually very counterproductive. We're going to look at what I think are the four most destructive ideas from twin flame culture that the culture is now perpetuating. And I'm going to offer some alternative, perhaps triggering points of view. And if you stick around until the end, what we're going to do is do some idea sex, where we take a look at this trend of the twin flame search history and compare it or draw some parallels between that and the big event driving the insanity that is 2020 and probably the decade to come. Number one, romanticizing unhealthy relationship dynamics. Let's start with what we've already seen in that quote, which is a woman trying to save a self-destructive man from himself. Need I say more? Oh, 'tis but the tip of the iceberg. This is quintessential of the culture. If you ever peruse twin flame forums or blogs or comments, you'll find that there are a couple of themes that jump out right away. One is that like 90% of this is written by women. And two is that these connections often fall into one of two camps. Yes, these are generalizations, but from a broad thematic point of view, this is generally what we see. So I call these camps one-sided connections and volatile connections. In a one-sided connection, the divine masculine isn't interested in the feminine. So he may have ghosted, he may not know she exists, right? Like if you think your twin flame is Harry Styles, probably this camp. They may have had a one-night stand and he never called her back. In any case, the hallmark of a one-sided connection is limerence. And limerence is a psychological term for a state of strong, involuntary, biochemical obsession with someone. And it can last for years. And if you scroll through some of these stories, you will find people who have waited years, sometimes decades, waiting for their alleged counterpart to come around. On the other hand, we have volatile connections, and volatile connections are often what twin flames look like when they are in union. So they tend to be unstable relationships. I think the word that Megan Fox used was self-destructive tendencies, and so people in them may not be mentally or emotionally healthy. And as a result, you'll find a lot of really angry, condescending feminines on these forums describing relationships that either sound codependent in the extreme or mutually abusive, not in a physical way usually, but in like a mental, emotional, verbal way. And so they're very tumultuous connections. You know, one day they're your twin flame and the next they're a sociopath or a narcissist. Is it just me, or do people throw these words around all the time now? Like sad confetti. In their case, whether these connections are the one-sided kind or the volatile kind, the sheer unhealthiness of them is justified by a widely held belief about twin flames, which is that these divine counterparts are intended to trigger greater awakening and healing in each other. In other words, I trigger your baggage, you trigger mine, and then we do all this purging and healing work to arrive at a better version of ourselves. So sort of like a Disney fast pass to 5D, growing faster together than they otherwise would. And that doesn't sound like a bad thing until you read the stories of how this actually plays out. And it's one of those things where like theory versus practice, something is totally lost in translation. Because the theory is all like sunshine and rainbows and 5D. And then the practice, like when you actually see the way it pans out, it can be kind of disturbing. 2, believing someone should change for you. In both the volatile and one-sided connections, there's always some degree of what is called the runner-chaser dynamic, where the masculine usually pulls away and the feminine chases after him. And the explanation for this in twin flame culture, the commonly espoused belief, is that this happens when one or both parties are unhealed. So that's the theory. But the practice, what it usually ends up looking like, is a lot of finger pointing at the masculines. And so you'll hear divine feminine say things like, he's running because he's scared of rejection. He's scared of intimacy. He's scared of connection. The implication, of course, being that if he would just get his shit together in a little box and put it away, we could be happy together. He can't even talk back because like 90% of dudes who are an object of this attention don't even know it's a thing. And of course, there's an explanation for that in twin flame theory, culture as well, right? Which is that the divine masculine is less spiritually evolved than the feminine, so he's slower to wake up to the connection. Oh, we're right back to being condescending, aren't we? I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and throw out some alternative possibilities, just some spaghetti at the wall, just some idea hats to try on. The first is, could it be, in the case of a one-sided connection, that there is a large community of women who were rejected and became obsessed, and we are spiritualizing this by saying a masculine runs when they're unhealed? Could it be, in the case of a volatile connection, that there is a large community of women trying and failing to save emotionally unavailable bad boys, or maybe just salvage relationships that aren't good for them, and we're spiritualizing this by saying these people are healing each other? Could it be that we are spiritualizing these things rather than acknowledging the fact that sometimes our feelings aren't reciprocated, and sometimes, despite loving someone, a relationship can be bad for us. And I get that that's painful, but I think it's important to consider possibilities, because this narrative, in addition to the many problems I think it has caused, this narrative has led to this attitude of entitlement, where divine feminines feel entitled to a divine masculine. Like, so often you see people get it into their head that a connection is destined without ever considering the role of free will, without ever taking into account that another person is never beholden to us, right? No one owes us their time, their energy, and certainly not their personal healing. But I think a huge part of twin flame culture is rationalizing things rather than facing a bruised ego. And that brings us to number 3, which is rationalizing rejection. A lot of people have gone ahead and documented the stages of a twin flame connection, and there's this quintessential period of separation where the masculine runs, usually the masculine, not always. And so what we see is usually the feminines rationalizing this action. And so we might hear something, the most common being, he needs to heal, right? The second most common is something like, I haven't done my inner work, and therefore he is mirroring my lack of self-worth back to me. He's too broken and doesn't realize he deserves something this good. Or probably my favorite, which is, he's just scared of the depth of our connection. He just wants me so bad. Unpopular opinion. I don't know which dimension these people are operating in, but usually when someone walks away, it's because they don't want you. I feel awful saying that. I feel like the mother Grinch saying that. But it's also something we shouldn't have to say, because people have a choice in who they associate with, who they date, who they love, and people will always make the decisions they believe are best for them. We should respect that. Like, where do people get off thinking they know what's best for someone else? And that is the third thing that I think is really dangerous about twin flame culture. On one hand, it glorifies this idea of unconditional love and freedom, all the values of 5D. And on the other, it is rooted in something very selfish, something rooted in attachment. In fact, it's so selfish that there are twin flame coaches, hundreds of them, offering services to bring people back into union, to force a union. Mind you, almost none of these coaches are in union themselves. My bullshit antenna tell me something is amiss. A number of these coaches are very obviously trying to capitalize on the human need to feel connected, to feel complete, to feel a sense of belonging. And that isn't unique to people who believe in twin flames, right? That is a universal thing. It's something we all experience. But it wasn't until recent years that we started looking to a romantic partner to fulfill this for us. And I don't know if it's like that all over the world, but it's certainly the case in the West, more specifically the United States. Esther Perel has written extensively about this. She is a couples expert and the author of the international best-selling book, Mating in Captivity. And she has such an interesting perspective on this, because she says that as we've experienced changes in our economy, that's been reflected in marriage dynamics. And so we used to have these really like tight-knit communities. We used to have a village, right? And now in modern times, we've gotten to be very isolated. And our social circles have shrunk considerably. And so we look to one person to do for us what an entire village used to. So we're not looking for a stable life partner anymore. We're looking for someone who is our adventure buddy, our passionate lover, our domestic partner, our co-parents, our best friends, personal cheerleader, and any other role we need fulfilled. Is it any wonder that 50% of marriages crumble under the weight of expectations like that? We no longer have the villages, the communities that we used to, because technology, for the most part, has made us very self-sufficient and self-reliant. And as of this year, like the loneliness epidemic is a thing. It's been in the works for years. But this year, our politics have us more divided than ever, and COVID-19 has us more socially isolated than ever. As a result, we're being pushed further and further apart. We're hungrier than ever for connection, and Perel says that we are looking for that connection. What we used to get from social outings and churches and temples and extended family, we're looking for all of that in one person. It seems to me that regardless of whether or not twin flames are literally real, this has an interesting metaphorical implication because more and more people are jumping on the bandwagon, celebrities now too, so we know this has gone mainstream. And I think that tells us something about the current zeitgeist, where we've gone from looking for a soulmate, right, an ideally suited partner to share our life with, to looking for the other half of our soul. I would call that an escalation. Perhaps what we're seeing is a paradigm shift where a sense of community and connectedness has diminished, and as a result, we're looking for something, some part of us we feel is missing. But I don't think we're missing a person. I think we're missing a way of being. So we're going to zoom out to the macro level here and get a little esoteric. So let's idea sex between some twin flame stuff and the big shift happening in 2020. The big shift will have its own video soon, but we're just going to touch on it here. So in a lot of different spiritual circles, it is believed that our species is undergoing a kind of evolution. Our collective consciousness is evolving to a higher state of consciousness. And while it technically began much earlier, in 2020, this shift has become unignorable. So if it's felt like a strange year, this could be why, because the universe is making big moves. And what the shift is believed to lead us toward is a golden age that has been prophesied about by literally cultures and religions and mystics all over the world for millennia. It would be almost easy to dismiss, except that this stuff lines up so strangely well. So this golden age, we can call it 5D, Age of Aquarius, the land of milk and honey, heaven on earth. We can call it whatever. The hallmark of it is love, but not love like we typically think of it, which is love with conditions. It is more an experience of transcending the self and experiencing unity. So unity consciousness, Christ consciousness, God. Again, people from different walks of life call it different things. But what this all boils down to is realizing that there is no you. Or rather, you are not a you are a we. And we are all that is. And all that is we. It's like a weird cosmic nursery rhyme, isn't it? It is a state of consciousness that is very real and accessible. It's what we experience before we come into the world, and it's what we experience when we die. But we can experience it now, in this lifetime. And in fact, there's an idea that it's accessing this higher state of consciousness that will usher in a new era. So how does this tie into twin flame dynamics? I know we just jumped off into the deep end, the deeper end. We know that reality is a fractal. It is a hologram. So the macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm. What if this desire to be in union with an other half is just a physical manifestation of this drive to return to the wholeness we came from, to experience this state that the universe is pushing us toward in 2020 and in the years to come? And how interesting that the whole point of a twin flame dynamic is to drive people deeper into their spiritual awakenings, and that the capstone of a spiritual awakening is this experience of unity consciousness. And so often we think we want love where I am yours and you are mine, but the real love, God's love, is I am that I am. And that's why I think the twin flame conversation needs to be reframed, because everyone thinks it's about coming into union. It's not about union, it is about unity. That is it for today. If you are interested in taking an analytical lens to mystical and spiritual phenomena, do join the guild, subscribe, and in any case, thank you so much for joining me on Idea Sex today. Oh, I was sitting on the microphone. I wasn't wearing it. Kiara, I'm sorry. There's like no good place to put this on here. Nipple clamp. Wait, I have an idea. Ha! I'm terribly clever. There we go. Get off my porch. I'll stab you.